Hi guys, and welcome to Lizzie D Makes. Today I'm doing something slightly different, and I am doing a whole sort of mini video series on how to teach yourself to build websites, how to get into web development, and what sort of things it is that you need to go and find, what you need to type into Google, what you need to go and find information on in order to prepare yourself for getting your first job as a web developer. So I've explained in previous videos why I'm doing this and why I think it's a great idea. It's not like my usual content, which are actually frugal small space living videos, but I've had a lot of interest in this sort of information from my friends and family, and so I decided that I would put it out and sort of give you a sort of brief overview of what it all is, how it all works, give you all the words and things that you need to be able to go and research more on any topic, and point you in the right direction for some free online resources that you can use in order to find more out about these the various topics that you would need to know to get your first paid web development job. So in this video I want to talk about the various different options for web development for mobile devices. So the first thing I want to talk about is responsive design. So responsive design basically means building a website where the CSS can account for different screen sizes. So the way you do this is using something called media queries. So CSS media queries, in the past, CSS obviously has been able to produce a different set of CSS for if you're going to print it, or if you're going to email it, or if you're going to display it in the browser. But that's gone one stage further in CSS3, and you have media queries, which can essentially say, if you're displaying this on a screen that's only 300 pixels wide, show it this version. If you're displaying it on a screen that's 1024 pixels wide, then use this version of the CSS. And what this allows you to do is to create a different experience for someone who's looking on a small mobile screen. So for example, if you've got plenty of width, you might have columns of information going across the full width of that. If you then have to shrink that width down to a very small width on a mobile device, but it's very tall because you can keep scrolling all you want, then what you do is you essentially stack things. So things that were to side by side with each other become stacked top to toe. And you can do this using CSS3 media queries. Once you've stacked things top to toe, you might also want to make some other changes to the way the website looks and feels that are more tailored to someone who is interacting via touch than for someone who's interacting via a mouse. So for example, on a website, you will probably have different things that happen when you hover over links, buttons. You might have, they change colour slightly when you hover over them, which sort of indicates that you are in the right place to click. You might have the cursor change from being an arrow to being a little finger pointing. You might have smaller input fields that you click into and start typing and so on, and you can drag and close bigger and smaller depending on the amount that you're going to type. And you don't have to make any sort of accounting for the keyboard appearing on screen, because you've got a separate keyboard that's plugged in that you're going to be interacting with. So when you switch from that sort of web environment to a mobile environment, obviously you don't have the ability to hover over things on a touch screen. You're either pressing them or you're not. There's no hover functionality within that. You also don't have a cursor because you're not moving a mouse, so there is no cursor to change from an arrow to a finger. You're interacting with something with a big finger as opposed to with a very, very precise mouse. So the areas that you've got to click to be able to do something need to account for the fact that you're trying to do it with an uncoordinated large finger, as opposed to, you know, a really small point of the arrow on your browser with your mouse. If you have ever tried to go on a website in the past where they don't have a mobile friendly version, and you have to pinch and sort of expand the screen so that it's large enough that you can actually click on the link without clicking on the one next to it by accident over and over and over again, you'll know exactly what I mean. But accounting for the fact that someone is interacting via touch is quite crucial in coming up with a good responsive design. The other thing is that obviously when you are inputting data on a mobile phone, on a touch screen, the first half of the screen is taken up with the keyboard, so you're only able to see the rest of the half of the screen. So the input boxes and labels that appear to the side of input boxes and so on need to be able to fit in that top half of the screen. Whilst you're typing away on the bottom half of the screen, you still be able to see what you're actually typing. So those are some of the key considerations to take into account when using CSS3 media queries in responsive design. In most cases, it's not worth implementing a third-party library like Twitter Bootstrap to handle responsive design and to handle these sorts of considerations, because these libraries are heavy. You can limit, certainly with Twitter Bootstrap, which parts of the library you actually download into your files that you include in your script tags on your page. Obviously, if you're going across poor 3G mobile connection, you don't want to be adding extra files and things that have to be downloaded before they can interact with that web page on their mobile phone. You want it to be light, quick and easy. So there's a couple of reasons why you wouldn't want to use something like Twitter Bootstrap. The other thing that libraries like this do is that they force you to work in a specific way, and often that way is inefficient in order to be the same in any situation. So certainly with Twitter Bootstrap, you have to use specific CSS classes and things in your HTML markup. But it also, when it's interacting with those, it injects a whole load of new classes and things onto a given document element, and it becomes quickly quite unwieldy and quite difficult to debug when you're interacting with something like Twitter Bootstrap. The pluses of working with a third-party library like this is that if a new browser feature comes out, they can add that in for you, and you don't have to worry so much about cross-site compatibility, and you don't have to think about how you're going to style the basic stuff on your website, because buttons and input values, they do it in a modern, clean, perfectly fine way that most websites, you don't really notice the little details and you don't really care so much, but it makes them all look the same as all the other websites that are using Twitter Bootstrap. So you've got that sort of consistency of user experience, which is good because people like to know how to use things, and if they've seen it before a million times on a million different websites, they feel comfortable with how to interact with it. So there are pluses and minuses of using third-party libraries like that. But a lot of them, they also work on a grid system, so they consider the screen to have a certain number of columns and rows, and then when they stack them, they cut them up in the same way. So if you imagine that you had 12 column grid to start with, and then as the page shrinks, it goes from 12 to 6 and 6 as it stacks, and then it goes to 4, 4, 4 as it stacks, and then it goes to 3, 3, 3. All these are multiples of that make up 12. So it sort of makes it quite variable in what size it is. It's always going to work to stack in a good order, because it's dealing with a number of grid items that is easily divisible as the screen size goes up and down. It's not the quick and dirty method, but the fast, lightweight and efficient method, in most cases, if you're working on a medium-sized project, maybe with 1 or 2 other developers, and you all know what the CSS method that you're using is, and you don't have to have people coming in who've never seen your CSS before and don't know anything about you, coming in and sort of debugging things or adding new functionality in, then the best method for doing responsive design is really just to have certain breakpoints and handle them in media queries. So anything over 1024 pixels wide is a desktop. Anything from 1024 to 900 is probably a smaller laptop. Anything from 900 down to 500 is maybe a tablet, and anything from that down to sort of maybe 250 pixels wide is maybe a sort of mobile phone touchscreen. And basically designing for those breakpoints, that's going to cover the vast majority of users well. It's very straightforward to set up in your CSS, because you just need to put those breakpoint media queries in and put all the code that's different into the blocks going down. So mobile first design would suggest that the first design you do is the mobile, and that's the top of the cascade, and then as the screen gets wider you add all the deltas, all the things that are different, into the next level of media query further down the style sheet that gets applied as it gets wider, and sort of interacting with the cascade in that way. In the old mobile web, back in the day, it's only 5 or 6 years ago now, it used to be the case that people might create a separate mobile only version on mobile dot as a subdomain of their web page, and they would have a limited set of functionality of features that were available on the mobile version. This is considered a really bad practice nowadays, because people want to be able to do whatever it is they want to be able to do on their phone. They don't want to have to go and sit down at a big terminal and use the mouse and everything. They want to be able to sit in front of the telly and do it on their phone on the sofa, and so they want all the functionality to be available to them, and they expect you to handle making it an intuitive user experience. So it's considered much better practice to use responsive design to make all the functionality that's available on the website available on the mobile version of the website, rather than having an actual separate mobile website that has a limited subset of things available on it. The other thing that I wanted to talk about with regard to mobile and development for mobile is the wrapper apps. Essentially things like Cordova, PhoneGap, various other ones like this that are sort of hybrid apps where you write the actual code for your application in HTML, CSS and JavaScript just like any other web page, but then you wrap it within a framework that handles all the native interactions for Android and for iPhone and any others that you want to support. So things like PhoneGap's Cordova project, they will handle talking to the keyboard on the mobile phone in native code. They will handle displaying your website in a headless browser, which is essentially they show your website in a browser, but the browser doesn't have a browser bar or anything at the top, no tabs, nothing like that. It's just like the middle bit of a normal browser, and that takes up the whole screen of the app. So when you click on it, it basically loads your web page but pretending to be an app, and that means that you can now write Android and iOS apps using normal web code, and then you can compile them through a tool like PhoneGap's Cordova, and that will then work. It'll be able to interact with all the features of the mobile phone. So if you want to be able to use the camera in someone's phone, or you want to be able to access their photos and things like that, the app will ask them, do you want to allow this app to access your photos? They'll be able to click yes, and then it will be able to interact with the PhoneGap API on that functionality in the native code, and you never actually have to learn how to write native code for Android or for iOS, because PhoneGap or whichever one you use have already done all of that hard work for you. So you can literally just create your mobile friendly responsive design application and then put it inside a wrapper app. Now, the app stores do a certain amount of vetting, and they're not going to just let you put a mobile version of your website as an app. It has to actually make sense as an app, and it has to allow you to actually do something that's going to be beneficial to have it as an app. Otherwise, just send them to your website on their mobile phone and have the website be mobile friendly, and that's fine. But if there's actually a reason why they'd want to keep going back to your website over and over again to do something, you've got some sort of, you know, real app-like functionality that you're going to give out, then doing a hybrid wrapper app is a perfectly valid option, and it's something that you can use in conjunction with your knowledge of responsive CSS3 media queries design, and the principles of stacking for mobile, the principles of handling touch interactions, and the considerations that they bring in terms of design, and how you can design for mobile first and make sure that you give a really good experience for mobile. If you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up, and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to hear more videos, not on this topic because this is just a short mini series. Just check out the playlist for those, but if you'd like to hear more videos from me on my normal stuff, which is frugal small space living. Hope you've enjoyed this mini series. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.